Welcome back to News at Prime. The lifting of Covid-19 restrictions this week is positive news for South African tourism, which has been one of the sectors hardest hit by restrictions since the beginning of the pandemic in 2020. The sector is welcoming the lifting of these rules and gatherings in particular that had been a major issue of contention, detrimental to the economy as well as the regulations that required travellers coming to this country to take a PCR test and prove that they were COVID negative on arrival. Let's speak about this now. We're joined by government tourism expert, Dr. Unathi Henama. Dr. Henama, very good evening to you. Welcome to the program. How detrimental would you say this last batch of restrictions had been for tourism in South Africa?
Good morning to the listeners. Good morning to you, Hototo. The tourism was really killed in this country because every time regulations were done, it was as if they were done to destroy our industry. But we encourage government and lobbied government to say, let's act faster. Let's use scientific methods. Let's look what is happening in the global north and apply it in the global south. Let's use science to determine that. So the tourism industry has suffered. Remember, it's the second biggest employer after mining, second biggest contributor after mining again. So many jobs have been destroyed. Many restaurants, lodges will not open again because of, at times, government slow response. So we really suffered. 90% of our economy during COVID was not operational.
And what do you think then for the remaining businesses has changed, let's say when you compare 2022 to the way the tourism sector functioned in 2019 and in those first 2 months of 2020 before that first hard lockdown?
What is happening is that when I speak from a global perspective is that international tourists are preferring to travel closer to home. Remember, we are very far from major source markets. Think about the UK, the USA, France, Germany, Netherlands, China. Those, when we speak about the top 10 destinations that come to South Africa, we are very far from those countries. So what COVID has done is that people are saying, let me rather travel closer to home so that if there are changes, if there's a new pandemic, I can go home closer. So what it means that it robs South Africa of this highly valuable international tourism market to the detriment of more arrivals, which when we speak in bread and butter terms, as most people in labor unions say, it means less jobs for our people, less income, and less ability of us to create jobs, which is quite unfortunate.
And given that now the world is dealing with a rising cost of living crisis, you see it in South Africa, we're having that conversation. It's happening with fuel in the UK as well, they're dealing with it. The Americans are also quite concerned about the direction the cost of living is going, and other markets. How much of a challenge is that going to pose to the recovery of the local tourism sector?
I think as a country, I think the Minister of Tourism, Mamali Sisulu, needs to have a serious discussion about, not just a discussion, but initial discussion about how do we reduce the cost of living in South Africa, because if tomorrow you try to book a flight to PE, you'll pay the equivalent of a return flight to London and back. That's because of the anti-competitiveness of our aviation industry. So we think we're a great country, we're a beautiful country, but our competitiveness is low because the pricing in South Africa is expensive. And I'm not speaking about private providers. Look at our aviation. Look at the cost of protection that guest houses have to provide. Mr. Khototo, we always say, if the cities and towns are good enough for the citizens to stay there, the tourists naturally come. Let's make government work. Let's ensure that local government, public government, everything functions. Then it is easier to attract tourists because before we lie, the tourists always know the truth.
So South Africa is a popular tourist destination, be it because of the revered mass democratic movement and the history of this country and how South Africa was basically liberated from apartheid. People come here to visit Robben Island. They want to go to Vilakazi Street, see where the late Nelson Mandela and Archbishop Emeritus Desmond Tutu lived. People want to see Table Mountain. They want to go on game drives, right? So there is an abundance of things to show people. But do you think at government level enough work is being put into the success, active work that's being done for the success of the industry, despite or over and above the natural resources and the history that is there to sell?
Esteemed Khototo, we've got the product. Excellent. Beautiful. But we are stagnant on 10 million tourists. A country such as Malaysia is pushing 30 million tourists. So we are not a popular destination, number one. We've got the product. Great. Now, what are the issues that affect us? The cost of traveling to South Africa is expensive. The cost of traveling to South Africa is expensive. The cost of the safety concerns, personal safety and security concerns, make it difficult for tourists to choose South Africa. The product is there, excellent. But remember, esteemed Khototo, for tourism to succeed, we need an enabling environment provided primarily by all three levels of government: national, provincial, and local. And if that is not functioning in a country like South Africa, we can't expect tourists to choose our country, which on every TV channel we know South Africa is in the abyss. South Africa is not functioning. We don't have electricity. So for South Africa to succeed, for tourism to succeed, our country needs to do what is basic, what is right. Mm-hmm. Yes, we can go promote our country, but they'll tell us, you guys don't have electricity. We're unsafe in your country. Let's fix what must be fixed. And we cannot blame tourism for that.
Let me ask you,
it's a whole government approach.
I'd like to ask you about domestic tourism. South Africans are saying they are apprehensive about visiting certain places because those are priced out of the domestic range, or they're priced, shall we say, to take advantage of what international visitors who are paying in dollar or euro terms are able to afford. How true is that on the ground, and is the industry itself responsive to the changing economic times and making sure that someone who lives in this country is able to explore and then pour into these businesses financially?
I think, my esteemed brother, yes, in any country you go to, there'll be exclusive places and then there'll be less exclusive places. For example, if you go to the Madikwe area around South Africa, I mean, the prices are quite very, very high. Yeah? But even in Cape Town, you can still find your hidden gems, where you can still get an Airbnb and still be able to experience South Africa, even though the price is a bit pricey than other places. I agree about that. I think the former Minister of Tourism, Mameloko Kubai Ngubani, used to speak about, there was a discussion about having a dual system where South Africans pay this price based on them presenting their identity documentation and foreigners paying a different price. All I can say is that we are a great country. There's so many to be done. Maybe our towns, cities, and provinces are not saying, in Lujoluputsu, these are the 10 things to do. In Langeban, Pananosta, these are the things to do. Sometimes the issue is that there is sometimes lack of marketing, because we all think about going to Cape Town, but there are greater things to do outside of Cape Town, you know, going to other more better destinations which are not crowded at a cheaper price. So I think at times it might, us looking at the top attractions, Table Mountain, going to the island and all of those things. But there's still a great scope. But it gives an opportunity for the smaller dorpies, for the smaller towns, to give visitors a much more authentic experience where they can engage with the locals, engage with the local community, engage with the experience that they have, and give them a lifetime experience which will make them what we want, to be lifetime consumers of tourism.
Dr. Unathi Henama, let's leave it there for tonight. Thank you very much and have a great evening further.